As the proud children of science and reason, we have made ourselves the orphans of wisdom. Dr. Deepak Chopra. We cannot betray our spiritual nature without paying a great price. It is not that we have a soul, but that we are a soul. Dr. Rachel Riemann.
Welcome to Spiritual Resilience. We're grateful to have you here. My name is Bruce Clement, and this is my aunt, Tana Burton.
Hi, guys.
And we do stories every week, or we're at least trying. So what's the story for this week?
All right. So this is a a fun story, but I need to give you a little background to it. So today I was talking with my sister, your Aunt Myra, Bruce,
Yes.
and we were, delving down delicious rabbit holes of cognition and thought. And one of the things that we were talking about is how interesting it is and how difficult it is to see ourselves, and how interesting that it's so difficult for us to see ourselves. And so I just wanted to share an experience that I've had with that, and then, have some discussion. Because this is definitely a thing we want to understand, I think, and put in our toolbox and build our resilience by knowing this about ourselves. And if we know it about ourselves, then of course we know it about others as well. So I love to teach, right? That's one of my favorite things. And so I actually homeschooled my fifth child, my baby, through high school, which was just, can I say, the funnest experience I've ever had. It was absolutely so fun. And so during the summer, what I would usually do with my kids is that I would spend, those 2.5 months going over curriculum that they were supposed to have learned in the grade they just got done with, so that I could find the holes, what they were missing, what they hadn't understood correctly, and fill those holes, teach them during the summer, and then they were ready to go for the next year. With McKenna, I knew exactly where she was at academically because I was her teacher. And I didn't have any angst about that. And so that was not a thing. So that first year, that first summer, after I started teaching her, I was like, okay, so what should we do during the summer then? I know you guys are feeling bad for my kids. Most children, get to play for the summer. My kids got to have school with their mother. That's because I'm a bit of a nerd. So McKenna, I didn't have that problem with her, my youngest. And so I was trying to decide, what should we do during the summer? Well, one of the things that I wanted us to do together was art. I wanted us to do watercolors and, acrylics and oils and pastels and charcoals and colored pencils and all the things. I just wanted us to do art together because I love art. I love charcoal. I love portraiture. I love oils. I have always wanted to do watercolors, but I'm scared spitless of them because they're so demanding and unforgiving. You have one chance. You have a wet paper, you put the stuff down, and that's it. That's all you get to do. There's none of this layering, reworking, those things that make me feel safer inside, like you can do with oils. So I decided that her and I were going to do watercolors together. And so another thing you need to know about me is that I love all of the art accoutrement, right? I love to collect all the things. I have just a whole bevy of paintbrushes, and here is how I choose them. And it's important that it's insightful that I walk into the craft store or the art supply store and I say, who wants me? And always there are paintbrushes that answer. And I pick them up one by one. We develop a relationship. They get in my cart and come home with me. And, you know, that's with everything. That's with the delicious cold pressed paper that I love so much, which of course you need for watercolors, and just all the things, all the things. And so we're going to do this watercolor together. And I had this little booklet that had this, you know, picture of this meadow of flowers. And it had a few really, really loose instructions. And so I said, let's do this picture. And we studied it. We talked about it. We got the feel of it. We developed our relationship with it. And we had a plan. And so we chose the day. It was time to do the deed. And so I'm just like in my bliss. I'm getting out, you know, all my brushes and sitting them in the middle of the desk. And I get out our hard boards that we tape our paper down to just right, you know, and we touch the paper and feel its texture. And I have our little things of water that hold the paintbrushes as well. And I have the paper towels set around here and there, and just all the things. And I'm just loving this experience of setting up, right? This is one of the things I love most. And so I take the little tubes of watercolor pigment and I squeeze them onto the palette. And I mean, this is like the very best part of all. And everything is ready. And then we sit down to apply water to the paper, and my stress level shoots through the roof. I'm just like, here we go. And so I've never had any experience with watercolors before. I have no idea what this medium is going to behave like. And so it was interesting. I had an experience with it, but I learned 3 really important lessons from this that I feel like relate to life as well as they relate to art. Relate to our experience in life. So you have to, you know, comment about what you see in this and what you don't. The first thing that I learned is that for me, starting is really difficult. It's, you know, so easy to have this idea in my mind and even plot out how simple it's going to be, right? And to just have this whole plan worked out. But starting is really, really difficult. I don't know, Bruce, if you have any, you know, qualms with starting or if that's super easy for you. But share with us if it's hard or easy.
It's terrible. Getting right down into something and just I am horrible at starting. I even had a project that I was working on lately that I had this idea and I was finally like, you know what? I've nailed down this idea. I'm gonna do it. And so I started into it, and the first thing that happened was I was like, this would be so much better if I did it this way. So then I kind of regrouped and was like, this is what I'm going to do. It's okay. This is where I'm going to start. And I got into it and got a couple things in. And I was like, but if I did this, it would be so much better. And it just kept getting more and more complicated. And I ended up just with more and more material. And I was like, I am never going to start anywhere. And so I had to kind of go back to the very, very basics of it and just start there because, you know, I couldn't just eat the whole elephant at once, which I love to try to do, which makes you just gag.
I love it. Now, I will clarify right here that I'm really, really bad at starting something myself, but I'm really good at starting somebody else. For instance, and we will get back to this original story, but I have another sister who was a partner with me in my floral business, and we had a massive wedding, a massive fresh flower wedding, so big, and it was up the canyon and everything, so big that we had to rent a refrigerated truck to work out of, right? That's how many fresh flowers we had, and so much we had to get done that day. It's just huge. And so have I, made that point well enough yet? And so here's my sister. It's dark 30. That's what we call it in our family. We're outside where it's cold, for the flowers. And I set my sister to work on doing some centerpieces. And she was just like, she has my disease. It's hard for her to start. And she's dancing around this floral foam in this container, just dancing around going, I can't start, I can't start, I can't start. And I walked over, grabbed a flower and went bang, stuck it in the middle of that foam and said, go. As soon as I did that, she was able to do it. Now, I need somebody who in my life can just bang that flower into my foam and start me off. Because I can't do it for myself. I'm terrible. Anyway, I'm glad to hear that you're equally terrible at it, Bruce, but I think for different reasons. I'm not thinking that much about a better way. I'm just off in La La Land in love with the picture in my mind and unable to render it, right? So anyway, you all will have to let us know if starting is easy or hard for you.
Yeah. I was just going to say something with art that I relate with is I am terrible at art. I have never been able to draw. I think I had to do, I wanted good grades in school. And I think I had one class, my only art class ever in junior high. I can't remember how many extra credit pictures that they let me turn in so I could take my grade from a C. I'll tell you enough that I was satisfied with what I was getting in the class, but it was a lot.
And as the youngest child, I am totally okay with that win. Totally okay. It is as good of a win as it would have been if I was a major artist.
But one day, and this is like years later, because I think this was only like 2 years ago, so 25 years later, not really 25, but I was watching something on YouTube, I think, and I saw this artist, and she started out drawing, and she just made like 15 lines. Like, what on earth is she doing? And she was just gently getting this curve in for the animal that she was drawing. I'm like, well, you can't do that. You just have to draw the line. Because that's where I would always get stuck, because I draw the line like, I don't like that. So I just sit there and erase, and then I try and do it again, and pretty soon there's a hole in the paper, and then I just give up. That whole concept of starting with just light, gentle strokes, and then moving in relation to those, and then roughing in, basically. I understand that in framing, but in art, it's never made sense to me until and I've had people explain it to me before, but for some reason, watching that particular person draw that, I was like, I get it. You don't have to draw it perfect the first time.
Oh my heck, hallelujah. I call it largely, loosely, lightly. Just get it mapped out on the paper.
And I struggled so hard with that concept.
I love it. See, you're way more of a perfectionist than I am. I'm really not. Again, La La Land, in love with my idea in my head. So the next lesson that I learned is that the best laid plans, you know where I'm going with that, get tossed right out the window, because there is, okay, this is maybe weird, but I believe that there is life, independent life in everything that is created, and that there comes a point when a girl or a boy has to abandon, at least to some degree, all of those plans to manipulate and control the birthing of the thing that you have thought of. So I had a lot of plans about how I was going to do this picture and manage the efforts and everything. And I had this firmly in my mind. And the truth is that none of that really mattered, because you cannot force the rendering of a flower any more than you can force the budding of a live flower, at least in my experience. And that independent life has to be allowed to express itself. And to do that, I've got to get out of the way of it to some degree. And so fighting against that can really leave us feeling hopeless and beat up, I think. Anyway, in my experience, it can leave me feeling hopeless and beat up. And even worse, it can leave me feeling like a total failure. But when I allow myself to get out of the way and allow a thing to be able to birth itself, I always stand in this space of awe when that happens. And I'm here to tell you that the birthing is not always lovely. I don't always end up with a lovely thing. In fact, I'm going to own the truth that I rarely do in comparison with what I've got in my head, right? In fact, it never matches what I've got in my head. But even if the effort falls on its face, I end up being in awe of the experience of it and of the birthing experience of it and what I have seen and learned from it. It's powerful and meaningful to me. And I really, really discovered that as I was doing this painting, for reasons that I'll share with you in just a minute. Thoughts on that, Bruce? Experiences in your life?
Well, I just think that really ties in with that video I sent you the other day. For those of you who've never heard of OK Go, I think they're a British band, but they were creating a film called Gravity, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
And if you haven't seen it, it's pretty cool. And they just talked about their whole process on things and how everyone reacted to it, because they were a British band and their dream was to film a zero gravity video, and the only people who let them do it were the Russians. And when they got there, the Russians saw their first creative efforts and were like, these are the amazing artists we're supposed to be helping, because all they did was play in the plane all day. And they had a bunch of trials and struggles and stuff in their own video, but just the fact that all of those people, not just the band, but everyone running the flights, and it was a huge process, but they all kind of had to let go and just let it form, because they didn't have it nailed out to be first. They didn't have it nailed out in the first place, but B, the band itself had only started, I think, 10 years prior to that. And they just talked about the fact that A, they never thought they would ever get the chance to get in a zero-G plane to try and do something like that.
Right.
Or be where they were at. And, you know, B, it's like, well, it happened, now what?
Exactly. And zero gravity is created by going over a parabola, with speed and all that stuff that creates the zero gravity. And you have, like, what was it, Bruce? 28 seconds
Yep.
28 seconds of the zero gravity effect. So you don't have a lot of time to control a thing in 28 seconds. It just kind of
No.
happens. It creates itself.
Well, they did have 3,000 tries, I think they said,
Yeah, it was a
which
lot.
also made them very airsick.
I was gonna say it makes you sick. It was tough. It was rough.
So there were a lot of growing pains, but yes, they didn't have a whole lot of time to try and control things, even in the very end. And just like you said, at the very end, when they were trying to just control everything and do a one take, at the very end of their last shot, paint spilled on the camera lens. And they had to
Yes.
go up one more time, which almost caused a complete mutiny.
Yes. Yes.
Which you can get
It's so
there. I mean,
interesting.
yeah. So that was what first came to mind, was that whole experience. And just and I think it was even telling you that it was inspiring to me, because they did get to the point where they're like, as their name says, okay, go, and they just jumped. And there's a lot of their videos when they're doing things that everybody's just like, that's insane, I would never do that. And even in your own life, you have to get to the point where you jump. We built a very abnormal house, and we got to that point where it was like, should we do this or should we not? And then we jumped, and when we did, we burned the lifeboats, which I just don't really suggest in life. Leave one.
Right? But the birthing process is what it is.
That's exactly right.
Okay, which leads me to the third and final for this application lesson that I learned in the process, and that is that it doesn't matter what kind of art you're doing, you will always find yourself peering out at you from it. And what I mean by that is that this picture that I was studying, that I was taking my inspiration from for this experience, was just, it was beautiful muted colors, and it was so sophisticated and just almost demure. It was stunning to me, and it was resonating all over me. And I think it was because I wanted me to be muted and sophisticated, and what I produced was not that. But
we showing that now?
I guess. Okay, so this is like, I'm being super vulnerable with you. We've expressed with you that this whole creating YouTubes is a very vulnerable experience. Well, this one makes me need to throw up, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. It was my first one ever. So you'll notice that the the colors are not muted or sophisticated. And I got done with it, and I snapped a picture and I sent it to my sister Myra. And I said, I just did this. It's my first watercolor. And she said, oh, I love it. It's so whimsical. So I was going for muted and sophisticated, but okay. What I realized as I stuck that onto my refrigerator to dry, in the warm morning sun coming through the window in my kitchen, is that there I was hanging on the fridge, looking back at myself. There's nothing muted or sophisticated about me. That really was a rendering of what's going on in my head, right? It's just dancing color, basically. And I was struck by that response from my sister, and that the way it settled in what I had expected to render. And then she was excited and sent it out in text to my sibling group, which just made me sick to my stomach. The thought, of being, hung out that way. But they were all, of course, oh, Tana, it's just like you and everything. And what I realized, just like a lightning strike, is that it was not surprising to a single other person. They're completely used to seeing me. I was the one who was shocked when I saw me. And I don't know about you, Bruce, but I think that's mostly true of us in our lives. Everybody else, I mean, why did I struggle hearing myself recorded on YouTube? Because it doesn't sound like me. And yet my husband, who heard a little clip of our recording playing, was like, "What did you say, Tana?" And I'm like, "Oh, shoot, that sounds like me? Really?" And it does. And so, see, this is my point. Nobody else on the planet is shocked when they see me or hear me on YouTube. I'm the one that's shocked. Nobody else is shocked when they see my dancing flowers that were supposed to be demure. I'm the one that's shocked. I'm the one that's shocked when I see me because it's so difficult to do.
I was struggling to come up with something off the top of my head until you said about hearing yourself, and I was like, yeah, yes, definitely. That was really hard. I think
It was
we
really
discussed
hard.
that in a previous episode where it's kind of a rude awakening.
Yeah, but you know what? After a little minute of doing that a few times, I'm okay with it now. I am. And now that I've showed you my picture and I didn't throw up, I'm getting okay with that too.
All right,
But
will we show on the next slide?
Yeah, so after
Okay.
that, I played with some other little things and I'm like, again, you don't see, muted, sophisticated colors when I do things, except for that one on the bottom row in the middle that's biggest. That is my muted, sophisticated achievement. That's what I see that I want the expression of me to be, and then the rest is what it really is. And so I came away from that experience saying, okay, Tana, so what would your life be if you adopted the attitude of just simply starting, of being able to get out of the way and let a thing birth itself organically, and of being willing to see myself in the experience? What if I painted my life that way?
Yeah,
That would
that's a
be
hard thing.
right. It would be really different. In some cases, I am going to say, though, that like with the watercolors, I did do it and had that experience with this YouTube channel. We are doing it and having an experience of sharing with ourselves. And I feel like there's so much in everybody that I see around me that is so deeply beautiful and of worth and value. And I want to mine it. I want to get it all out. I want to see it. I want to experience. I want to be blessed by all of that brilliance that's in everybody that I experience. I see it so easily in others. So why, my friends, is it so difficult to see in ourselves?
Yeah. I think it comes a point where we just want to be what we see, and we're not able to, like you said, let go. And the story that comes to my mind is the animal school. I I don't know where that specific reference comes from. I'm pretty sure it was in a book by Leo Buscaglia or somebody in my mom's education literature, but it just talked about a school
Just
where they were
fast.
very, that's very true. Could have been anything. Yeah, she was a teacher for 30 plus years. So yeah.
Not just a
But-
teacher, my friends, an off the hook, brilliant,
She's a very good
incredible teacher.
Yes. And we might be able to get to hear from her and my dad, who we keep referencing here in a while. So that'd be exciting.
Yes.
But the animal school is just they were trying to create a standard, and of all the animals, they finally formed a committee and said, all right, these are the minimum requirements. Instead of letting the birds fly and the snakes slither and the fish swim and the gophers dig, they tried to make a unified thing where everybody had to meet the minimum requirements. So they tossed the snake out of the tree to see how well he could do on his flight exams, and made the owl burrow to see. I mean, some can, but most can't.
Right.
And it just makes a mess out of everybody to not go into the full experience. And that's a totally different school of thought. And the other thought that brought me to is that our greatest strengths, I think, are just being who we are. And that's a really difficult concept to see, because everybody else sees who and what we are. The only thing I could think of is if you were a diamond and you were this hard, clear object, and so you just thought you were colorless and rough, and everybody else is going, well, you're a diamond. I mean, those are your properties, and they're really good for what they're used for,
Right.
But it's hard to see that worth, even if you're the bird flying and you're like, man, I wish I could dig, or anything else that you go wanting after. But like you said, I think there really is that barrier of being able to see what we're doing.
Right. And you know what? You know what I thought of when you were saying that they were trying to manhandle and create and force this wholeness, right? The paradox is that the wholeness is only created when all of our diversities are brought to the table.
Yeah.
That's wholeness. That's unity. That's the truth of that.
Having one
Well,
end of the
thank you for
spectrum
saying
all the way
that.
to the other.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And I want so much to experience the beauty and brilliance of things that you all bring to the table. And it's so difficult for me to trust a thing being birthed through myself. That we are all different expressions of this unity, and that we are all richer and more blessed when we have all of those different expressions and experiences and filters and just all the things. So, my dear friends, I think that my invitation to us this week is to paint our lives with a paradigm and a courage that says, I will start. Starting is hard, and I will do it. No, I
Smash
don't know
the
how the
flat rate.
medium works. No, I know it's not going to match what's in my head. No, I don't know how this is going to go. And I will start. And then allow yourself to not try to control it as much. Allow yourself to step aside a little and give your life that's trying to create itself some space to do that. And that takes a lot of trust, I think. a lot of trust in a lot of things. And then thirdly, to be brave enough. And I say this because I've experienced it. Be brave enough to see yourself in the experience of your life birthing. Because, my friends, it's just not always what we think it is in our heads. And I'm going to go ahead and say that starting with that first watercolor just unlocked a floodgate of whole new possibilities and ways for me to experience life and experience myself and the way that I see life and the filters through which I see and render my life, which is different than those that are muted and sophisticated. Just let's own it, Bruce. It's never going to happen. It's not in the cards for me. It will always be a flurry of color. It's just always going to be that way. And I love flurries of color. And sometimes I would like to achieve muted sophistication. I really admire that. So if you are that muted sophistication, please bring it to my table and let me live through you. Let me experience that through you. And I will be
Just
so
want to live
grateful.
in that other world for just a moment.
I just want to see what that looks like.
And
Anyway,
I know you kind of wrapped that up, but when you were talking about all of our different spectrums being you didn't say spectrums, but that is a giveaway to where I'm going, makes the wholeness, with the example of light by addition, is that not just focusing on one color gets you wholeness. It's all of the colors together equals white. And it's only when you start subtracting things out of it that you lose white.
yes, that's true. And I'm also going to point out that our visible light spectrum is like what, 1%?
Yeah.
Of the whole light spectrum. Oh, my friends, what if we were to allow those things outside of our vision to come in through us? Wow, there's so much more. That is also a very vulnerable spot to be in. But I think that life teaches me that growth lives in vulnerability. And change is vulnerable by definition. And that protopia that I was describing in the beginning, that is this process of becoming, this process of understanding how change changes things around us. This journey of change that happens inside of us, this soft process that is imperceptible from day to day, but is changing us nonetheless. I totally forgot what sentence structure I started all of that with, but I just so much want us to be willing to embrace that, to give ourselves the grace of knowing that we are changing, even though it's soft, even though it's not this big, grand, perceptible, measurable, quantifiable in this moment thing. It is absolutely just as relevant. It's absolutely just as necessary. And that we're doing it. And so let's just remember to start, to allow ourselves to get out of the way and to be willing to see ourselves in the experience. Life is always showing us ourselves, and we are desperately trying to stop it from that in an unconscious way a lot of times. Not always. But where we get into places that feel vulnerable, feel like they cost us, a lot of times that's what's going on. We're just trying not to see ourselves in that thing. Whereas if we could relax, and I'm speaking for myself, if we could relax and allow ourselves to see us, the cost of that experience, holding that experience at bay, would lessen and perhaps even just go away. And we would have a way different experience. So I'm saying that, Tana, learn these 3 things. Be willing, open yourself up, put down your facade of being in control. Clearly, you're going to render dancing color anyway. So just let it be. Just let it. Just start and just let it.
Yes.
And so those are my thoughts. We're just loving you for being willing to listen, being willing to participate and come on to our channel. We want you to feel blessed by it. We want you to feel connected. We would also, love a subscription and a like. Those are lovely things when you're doing YouTube. If you should feel so inclined. And we will talk to you again really soon. Loving you. Have a most wonderful week.